I have a Clemson insider. I know you're sitting there going, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Don't you say that. I'm Dikembe Mutombo in it. Don't you say that to me. I have a Clemson insider. This guy has his own show on the flagship station for Clemson sports. Yeah. Yeah. The only way he gets any more inside than that is if he has a whistle around his neck at practice. We're going to ask him some hard questions today, but I know he can answer them. Before I get to this wonderful person, yeah, he's actually a really, really good guy. I said that sarcastically. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, before I get to him in just a second, I hope you will subscribe. The channel's been growing. It's been blowing up, and it's because of you. So listen, if you like getting your heart rate all worked up talking about college football, I know I got my Clemson garb around me, but listen to me. I talk about everybody. Heck, I found out I'm a hit in Provo, Utah now, just because I talked about BYU. It really doesn't take that much to, you know, I mean, good grief. All you have to do is just talk about BYU and they love you because really nobody talks about BYU. I didn't say that. But if you like what I do, I hope you will subscribe. Okay, it's time. It's time for me to shut up and bring on the guest. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome to the show, Morgan Thomas. Morgan, thank you for coming on the show this morning.
I appreciate you having me. And I have friends that are from Utah and BYU, former coworkers. So, I like the blue and the stadium is beautiful. So, I mean, they deserve the props there.
Yeah, that is a stadium on my to visit list. I think it may be at the top, but I was told get nosebleed section tickets so you can see the mountains and hopefully steer in the day. So, Morgan Thomas, you have your own show on the flagship station of Clemson football. So I'm going to start off with a hard question. You work for the flagship station, so why not just toe the company line? Tell everybody what they want to hear. Talk a little bit about 16, 18 graduation rate, six consecutive playoffs, how we are spoiled. Toe the company line, and it makes your life easier. Why not?
Well, I understand where I am able to work, and I'm very blessed to work there. And to be honest with you, I've never been given a directive not to give an honest opinion. The entire staff there is very professional and very respectful, and there is a balance for sure. It is a business, so you want to be respectful to the university. You want to be respectful to the players and to the coaches. You also get interviews and things like that. So there is a level of professionalism that you want to uphold. But I would say I've never been given a directive to not speak my mind on a certain thing. And I don't think any of the other hosts have been given that as well, from Mickey to Faxon, Qualk, Ben, Walt. All of them speak their mind about, their disappointments. And if you listen this week, you've heard it. And you listen when they win and when they lose, there are things that are out there. Now, maybe I'm more vocal because I am on X a lot. Maybe I'm, on the message boards more than some of these guys. I know they like to try to avoid that, but I like to be involved with the fans because I'm a fan myself. And all of us are fans, in one way or another to Clemson, and we have a connection there. So I think it's a mutual respect, from a business perspective, but I also feel like if you listen Monday, Tuesday, even Thursday, when I was on with Mickey Plyler, we criticized the defense. We criticized the coaching decisions and the lack of preparation that I think everyone was frustrated with. Where you would probably want to stay away from, and I did this even before I was on the radio, is calling for someone to be fired because, I've been fired myself many years ago, about a decade ago, maybe more than a decade ago, I've been fired. So it actually sucks to be fired. So I try to just respectfully avoid mentioning the F word in that sense. I don't want to call for anybody's job because I know in the limited amount of time I've seen them, they are there. And, you don't go into college football to have like a work-life balance. You know what I mean? You go to college football because you love it and you love coaching kids and you love developing young men or whatever sport it may be, young women as well. But you don't do so because it's a great work-life balance. You're in the stadium, you're in the facilities much more than you want to be. And I know that from friends that are at high school level to college level to, the elite college level to even the intermediate college level. So I know the amount of effort and dedication they put into the job. So I respect them from that sense. But, I really, one other thing I'd like to say is you got to also remember as you're listening, by Friday, if you turn in on Friday and you want to complain, as a host, kind of already complained Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, So Friday, I'm ready to move on. Just like Dabo Swinney said on Monday, or Tuesday morning, he said, I'm ready to burn the tape and move on. That's a great thing for him. I personally wasn't ready to move on Tuesday. I wanted to keep complaining. But now that we're Friday, I'm ready to move on to Virginia Tech and see what they can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody, Morgan Thomas here on the show, and I appreciate him being here. Before we dive into Clemson, just give us an idea of what it's like to prepare for your radio show.
In the beginning, it was much more than it is now. I started YouTube. I actually started on Facebook videos 6, 7 years ago by myself, with a terrible camera, terrible microphone, and just thought it was something that I felt like I liked to do. I didn't have a lot of people watching, didn't have anybody really caring about it, but I prepared a lot. Like I wrote down word for word what I wanted to say, what stats I wanted to use. Now, because I talk about it more consistently every single week and I read articles every single day, I don't have to write every single thing down word for word. So typically for my show, a couple of hours before, I'll kind of look through what's the articles being written about, what's the fans talking about on the message boards, what are some debate questions that I can kind of bounce around, and then just kind of write down my thoughts. If there's any kind of stats that I can find, I know a lot of people out there love, stats and just kind of junkies with that. I have my passing chart that I do, so I kind of look at that and see. But my shows are different than most because I know I'm not an expert. Like I'm not Quack, I'm not Faxon, I'm not Mickey, I'm not Walt. I can't pretend to be someone who I have other jobs. I'm trying to be other things outside, but I can't, know as much as they know. So that's really not my style. My style is to try to have, a conversation, be a conversation starter, and even be a variety guy. If you listen to me on Mickey's show, we talk about, you know, people's problems. Just we talk about, we have competitions with different games. We talk about pop culture. I mean, just anything, my flying lessons and stuff like that. I try to bounce it around and show you who I really am, and just have conversations about Clemson. And maybe that leads me to some conversations that you don't have on the other shows.
Sure, sure. I think everybody trying to be everybody else is where you can easily get lost. So, like for myself, I'm just me on here. I'll have a little fun. I'll bring up some taboo topics when it comes to Clemson football. I agree with you about the F word, fired. I and also I'm very slow to criticize players. I will, but I'm very slow to criticize players because a lot of players are told what to do. Now they do drop the ball, they do miss assignments, but you know. Anyway, I agree with you. Just having your individual persona is a big deal, and I think that's where people resonates with you as a person. So it's did very well for you. Let's talk about the Clemson football team. We see a team, we know the accolades, we know the championships, we know the playoff run, we know all of that much stuff. We know that Dabo Swinney had 2 national championships by the time he was 48. Nick Saban didn't take over the Crimson Tide until he was 50 flipping 5 years old. It's not like Dabo is old, worn out. The guy he just can't do any better. So if there is a criticism of Dabo Swinney, for me, it's more out of respect. Like you're challenging the coach. We know that he cares, okay? We know that Swinney cares. But is there a question about the fire being there versus what it was like years ago? What's your thoughts on that?
You know, I don't see that at all. I think Dabo Swinney is just as motivated to, be a head coach. Not really. That's not his purpose. His purpose is develop young men for the future, whether it be football or not. And so, because he has a future that's really not based on championships or wins or losses, or even the football team, specifically, I think that that's why he continues to have that fire. He does not go through the motions, and he doesn't allow his staff to go through the motions. So, I understand where fans are frustrated. And as we talked about earlier, there's a balance there because you have a really good coach. You have one of the only coaches or one of the few coaches that have won a national championship. Now, can he win it again? Time will tell. I'm not going to predict the future. We don't really know. But does he need to make adjustments? I'm sure he would even tell you that he needs to make adjustments. Does he have players on the team that are talented enough to win these games he's losing? I still think so. Whether that's the case, 4 years from now, time will tell. But when it comes to the dedication, the commitment to the university, to the staff. I mean, he's been here since 15 years. I feel as if there's no fire lost, but there is a different challenge there. The message before was let's build something great. The message now can't be that. The message is more of, hey, we've been there. How do we get back to there?
Let's talk about Virginia Tech. We know what happened with Louisville. We know that we have the airing of the grievances. Frank Costanza. Let's move on to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech 3:30 this coming Saturday on ESPN. Clemson's a 6.5-point favorite. It opened at 6.5-point. It hasn't budged, which is kind of odd. Normally it budges some. It'll move a point or two, point and a half. At this point, and I looked up before we came on here, Kyron Drones, the starting quarterback for Virginia Tech, the guy's talented. In the loss against Syracuse, he didn't play against them, or he missed most of the game. That's, the reason a lot of people believe, including myself, that they did lose to Syracuse. But Virginia Tech, if you look at the games they've lost and how close they've lost them, they remind me a lot of Louisville. Let's look at Virginia Tech, Blacksburg. We know it's going to be tough. Brent Pry has some heat on him. What are you seeing going into this game? And with your contacts that you have within the Clemson community, what's kind of the message about this game in Blacksburg?
Well, I think, I've heard the same things that you've heard from Dabo Swinney, and that is that they have to be more mindful of the gaps on defense. They cannot allow to just get blocked up. They cannot allow running plays of 47, 45, 23, 12, just taking up 3 plays to take up half or more of the field in the running game is unacceptable for this Clemson defense from the beginning of Dabo Swinney's tenure till now. So what you saw against Louisville was disturbing because really, I don't think we've ever experienced a defensive line that has regressed to the point that it has. And there is a concern there because, one, it's injuries. Peter Woods has been injured for multiple weeks now, and he's still kind of fighting through, but he's not 100%. And he got that, I believe it was like kind of a shady block from a guy, I think it was App State, wasn't even involved in the play. And I was at that game and he was visibly frustrated and upset. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't go across the field to go punch that guy, to be honest, because he was angry. He watched the video on the sideline over and over, and he wanted back out on the field. They wouldn't let him initially. They kind of let him hang out, but he's not really 100%. You also have now Demonte Capehart. We won't know when he's going to get back. He's also in lower leg injury. And Peter and Park, TJ Parker, has not been. He's kind of had a sophomore slump. He hasn't been able to get to the backfield like he used to. So there's been a miss there. So the defensive line, and even Trey Williams would be the next guy after that. So when you see those big gash plays, you have Peyton Page and Stephylon Green. Stephylon Green's super young. Peyton Page, is kind of that backup guy. He's doing his best, and they're getting blocked up. And then you couple that with Barrett Carter, who ended up with one tackle. I mean, I don't even know how he sleeps this week, because a guy at his talent level to finish a game with one tackle, that's got to be eating away at you, because I know he cares much more than to see his name on a stat sheet like that. So Barrett Carter is going to want to have an improvement. The defensive line is going to want to have a huge improvement. And Dabo Swinney mentioned that too, is you're going to have to walk into Blacksburg. It's going to be a hostile environment, as it always is. And you're going to have to figure out how to fix that defensive line in 6 days. I don't know if it can be done, really. I really don't. But that's Clemson's number one goal, is to stop that, because, you can't just keep giving up big chunk running plays. And I mentioned this throughout the season. Before I went into the Louisville game, I mentioned this, and I got ripped to pieces in the message boards. Oh, Morgan, that's just the third string. That's just the fourth string. No, a lot of times it's the first string, it's the second string, or a combination of two, and they're giving up gash plays, and it's making it extremely difficult. You know how it is when you run the ball down the throat of your opponent. It's demoralizing in many ways, and it is also gassing you. A big deep play may only gas the cornerbacks, maybe the defensive ends, but you run up the middle and have a huge gash play, it's gassing everybody on the defense, because they're trying to just catch you.
I had that same response to me about the defense. It's like, oh no, it is this. And it's like, y'all, maybe every now and again, but you're wrong. I'm sorry. I mean, I know that the defense has been the backbone of our team. The defense has kept us in games for the past 4 years, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to say anything bad about the defense for whatever reason it may be. But reality is reality. Morgan, we come into this game, Virginia Tech is ranked 73rd in total offense. They're ranked 60th in total defense. Last week, we played a team that was tied for 83rd in red zone defense. They were tied for 96th in red zone offense. They went into the red zone, and their quarterback, who is not Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's not a mannequin from some store standing back there, but he got 2 touchdowns from what I can remember on the ground. They rushed for 150. I know that game is over. It's done. We have to move on, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you learn from it. And we look at this team. Who's ranked 73rd in total offense. We think about our defensive woes right now. We know the coaches are working on it. When you're approaching this, are you looking at this team and going, okay, which Clemson team's showing up? Which coaching staff is showing up? What's your thoughts there?
Isn't everybody thinking that too?
Exactly.
You want to, and right after the game, I put on X, is the 0-2 Clemson team the real team, or is the 6-0 team the real team? We don't know. We still really don't know. The unfortunate thing is, the truth is that the 6 wins came from teams that are struggling to win games, came against teams that are struggling to win games, win consistently. And the teams that seem to have it figured out on offense and a little bit on defense and can hang have kind of made Clemson look ridiculous. And that is a huge concern, because I don't think, for the most part, Dabo has ever, he doesn't accept being made fun of or being embarrassed. Most of the time, if you see an embarrassing loss, he makes a huge change, whether it be in the coaching staff or whether it be some sort of strategy there. So Dabo is not in the market of being embarrassed. West Virginia, think about that. It was one of the very first times. He is not in the market of that. South Carolina games all those years with the thumb, beware the fear the thumb, those kind of years did not set well with him. And so he kept focus on how to overcome those things and fight against that. Same thing here. Dabo's having to fight against, okay, how do I overcome this idea that Clemson can't win against teams that actually know what they're doing? And I think that's still a question right now. I hope that Clemson can go into tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon and say, what happened last week was just a figment of your imagination. We actually did burn that. It really didn't happen. Yeah, it's a loss, but, forget it. I hope that that's the way it goes, but it's hard to say if that's really the way it goes, because this offense, we assume the quarterback warmed up, Drones warmed up. He didn't play though. The running back, they said he will be ready to play. I believe the quarterback's going to be ready to play. That 1-2 combination there, when I look at it, I think it's kind of Cade Klubnik, Phil Maffa versus Drones and Tootin, And so you got to say, well, who's going to win that matchup? The concern I have is that Clemson's defensive line has been giving up gash run plays. Virginia Tech is 11th in the country in converting third downs with running the ball. So on third down, they're going to run the ball. They are not very good passing the ball. On third down, passing the ball, they are 98th in the country. So they're probably not going to pass the ball much on you. But the concern I have is that all you need to beat Clemson? I hope not. I really don't hope that Virginia Tech can just run the ball all night and beat Clemson. I hope that there is a change there. I don't know if the 4-2-5 defense is really the best last week or this week. I think, I'd love to see more Sammy Brown. Everybody, and again, going back to your radio question, the first question, a lot of the hosts have all said, we'd like to see more freshmen out there. You did it with the wide receivers, and I understand middle linebacker is more difficult, much more difficult than like an outside wide receiver. But Sammy Brown has kind of proven to you that he's pretty good when he's on the field. So he does make mistakes, and everybody's going to make mistakes, but he's pretty good too. So I'd like to see some adjustments there. I do think Virginia Tech is going to run the ball and probably try to embarrass Clemson's defensive line again. The question is, can Clemson reset and actually say, hey, not again, sorry.
The quarterback and running back combination for VT, they are the two top rushers for the team, and they account for 18 touchdowns on the ground. So it is a big deal what they do. Let's talk about that offense. From my perspective, I see Clemson going into a shell when they play a team that would defensively stand up to them. They have a defensive coordinator who will actually make adjustments and scheme for Clemson's talent, because Clemson still has the brand that they are Clemson. So you're going to get people's best. So we do have to consider that. At the same time, Clemson has to know that from a coaching standpoint, we're going to get their best. So we have to sharpen up. I believe that Clemson continues to go into these shells, as I say, offensively when they play a really good football team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they're going to scheme for them. Do we see Clemson go back in their shell this week, or did we learn our lesson this past week that no matter what it is, we have to scheme better? Because, heck, Idaho schemed quite well for Oregon in Eugene. Why can't Clemson do that against Virginia Tech?
Yeah, I think that's a common fan thing, is like, even for me, I'm just like, how did these other teams score so many more points than Clemson was able to? Clemson really didn't even have, 7 points and 6 minutes to go? Looking back at that, I'm like, how did Boston College get over 20? How did these other teams get over 20 against Louisville, and Clemson's like fumbling to get to 14? And that is kind of how it's been the past couple of years with the offense. Now, statistically, if you look it up, I mean, Clemson's offense is one of the best in the country, at least in the top 25 in almost majority of the major stats out there. But then the question is, who did they really play against? As you mentioned, the question is, what can they do against defenses that seem to actually know what they're doing, and defensive coordinators that seem to know what they're doing? For me, there is a question out there. Does Garrett Riley have the Riley syndrome? The Riley syndrome, meaning you can beat a lot of teams that are insignificant, but when it comes to the big teams, you really don't know what to do. I think Lincoln Riley suffers from that. Does Garrett Riley suffer from that too? I hope not, because I do feel like he's a good fit for Clemson still, but there is starting to be that concern of, does he also have that illness, if you will, of struggling against defenses that actually can adjust and know what you're doing? The offensive line did not perform well. Matt Luke will probably tell you, I haven't heard any of his interviews, but he'd probably tell you it's unacceptable. It seemed as if Louisville, all they needed to do was bull rush the outside tackles, and they got all the way into the backfield. And that was a trickle-down effect. Cade likes to have a little bit of a bubble. When you see Cade have his bubble, his footwork's better, his accuracy's better, and his vision is better. You can't go backwards to critique Cade. You can't say, well, why isn't he looking down the field? Well, he's not looking down the field because going back to his bubble is messed up. He doesn't feel it. His pocket presence really, probably, if you were on NCAA, I don't know what his pocket presence rating is, but I doubt it's a 99. I doubt it's an 80. His pocket presence really isn't super awesome. He has to have kind of a bubble, and he struggles to step up in the pocket. So when that happens, really it hurts your vision, your accuracy, and everything, and then your play calling as well. So even if you had a good play, you don't really know. Now, Clemson did have some drives where they put together really good offensive performance where he was moving the ball around. Bill Maffa was eating big chunks up, and Antonio Williams was making some good catches. Wesco was making some good catches. TJ Moore, outside of that perfect over the shoulder miss that he had, for the most part, he had a good game as well too. So it's kind of like glimpses of the offense, what they used to do, but it can't be one or the other. The defense coming out of halftime held them to 3 field goals and 2 punts. To me, that's bend, don't break. I would say bend, don't break.
Right.
The offense, on the other hand, went -8, didn't convert a 4th and 1 where Bill Maffa, if you see the video on my ex, he basically fell down. I don't know if anybody actually tripped him or he was tackled. I think Louisville just kind of 2-hand touched him while he was on the ground. And then the last one was a missed field goal, which took 11 minutes off the clock, which I know was the ultimate frustration of or 6 minutes off the clock for that one. Why are you down 19 and taking 6 minutes to then get no points? So, I think the defense can get a lot of criticism too, because it's so shocking that, the big run plays have just never been a problem for Clemson for years and years and years. So that's a shock. The offense too, when the defense bends and don't break, the offense has to show up as well. So they have to complement each other. I have to hope that against Virginia Tech, they can get back into what we had saw the previous couple of weeks, but there's still that question mark.
Sure. You talk about Clemson versus Louisville there, and I'm a big history guy, so I'm not going to put you on the spot because I know you have your relationships with people, and so I'm not going to do that to you. For me, I'm a big history guy and a big analytics based, driven based decision making. Not to say that you're not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But for me, my thought is if almost every time you play a team that will push back on you and they have really good coaching, more times than not over the past 3 years, you're losing. Yeah, it may make you sick that you're losing, but you have to go beyond being sick to the point to where, how do we truly fix this? Because the methods up to this point it's just not working. And I think what frustrates me is we've seen questionable offense over the past few years, even going back to Streeter, and some people can let Clemson off the hook because of Streeter in that one season. But I was really bothered by how many people turned on Wes Goodwin over this one game. And I know some will say, oh, it wasn't just one game. I was like, bro, if you're going to turn on Wes like that on this game, like you said about Garrett Riley, what are you going to do with Garrett? I mean, yeah, they're ranked number 5 currently total offense in the NCAA, but you're ready to get rid of Wes like that? I mean, come on. Is it because that the defense has been the lifesaver for so long, and now people are panicking going, hey, we have to at least get this side of the ball straight?
Yeah, I do feel like that it was more of a shock to step back and say, wow, it's not the 4th string. It is the starters. It is Barrett Carter. It is Wade Woodaz. It is, TJ Parker and Denhoff and Page and those guys that are out there. What I will say is that the injuries aren't insignificant. The defensive line is banged up right now, and we already knew going into the season the defensive ends there wasn't depth there. So that's more of a recruiting problem. But the defensive ends and changing coaches there's going to be a little bit of a lull between that and replenishing what you've been able to have for so many years at the defensive end side. So this year we knew was going to be a struggle at defensive end. We were sold that Peter Woods would go out there. Well, Peter Woods can do defensive end. It's not what he probably should do. He can do it. Can he do it when he's like 75%, 80%? That kind of suffers, right? You know how it's like, I play video games, so you know how it is when you move guys around and they're not in their position, their rating goes down. Well, think about Peter Woods in that way. He's a 99 overall defensive tackle. Defensive end, maybe he's an 80, maybe he's an 85, but an injured defensive end, maybe he's less than that. So it's patchwork right now, and it was patchwork against Louisville. And man, Isaac Brown just really showed Clemson. You're not going to deny me, tonight. And Louisville, my grandmother always tells me this, or she used to always tell me this, rest her soul, but you're due. She used to say this with the Atlanta Braves. Chipper Jones would go on a streak where he wouldn't get a hit, and he's a great hitter over the years, but he would go on a streak where he'd have a slump, and she'd say, "Oh, he's due," or Ryan Klesko he'd be due, or Fred McGriff, they'd be due, right? Louisville in the same way. You can't always beat conference opponents. Even Vanderbilt showing this year, you can't always beat conference opponents every single year. Being 0-8 against Clemson, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, that doesn't matter." They were bitter. I'm telling you, the fan base was bitter. They wished that they felt like Lamar Jackson should have beat Deshaun Watson, and he didn't. That was a
Right.
huge game. I think they felt there was one game. I don't know if it was Lamar Jackson, but was it Humphreys, or we had one of our punt returners return a punt for a touchdown and basically win the game for us at home again. So Louisville fans have been bitter for many years, and that trickles down to the staff and to the football team as well. They know, hey, we've never beaten Clemson in Death Valley. They had a lot to show. Dabo Swinney said today, or what I think it was yesterday, that excellence costs full price. So for Clemson to continue to have the standard that they've always had, they're going to have to pay the full price of commitment during the week and during the game to get there. It's difficult when you're injured, but I think Clemson can do it. It's going to be difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Morgan, tell us where we can find you online, on the radio, your show times, everything.
Well, for those of you who probably listen to me every now and then, thank you. I appreciate it. You don't have to do that. I really do appreciate it. My YouTube channel, The Morgan Thomas Show, is kind of on hold right now. I'm going through a career change. So I've been wanting to do some videos, but what I've been trying to do is my live shows, which are every Tuesday night, 7 to 9 on 105.5 and 97.5 The Roar. So you can listen in there. And I've been trying to live stream the past couple of weeks too, so you can watch it over on the live stream. Where I'm active almost every single day, and probably too much, is over on X at The Morgan T Show. You see it down there. You can follow me there and talk to me.
Everyone, I have a link to his channel in the description below the video. Hope you will go visit him. Let him know that you saw him on the channel, and subscribe and hit the thumbs up for him. Any closing thoughts for us, Morgan?
Well, I think it's just time for Clemson to again flush it and reset and really show that the defensive line and the offensive line aren't what we saw last week. And I think that Dabo Swinney, he has the experience, the skill, and he's paid guys. He's got a lot of guys that are former head coaches on the staff to fix it. Now it's time tomorrow afternoon to show it.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you 100%. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining me. Likewise, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, I hope you will. It is free, the sweetest words in the English language. I hope you'll do that, and drop a line and let me know that you're in here. Folks, you take care of yourself. Looking forward to the game tomorrow, 3:30 ESPN, Clemson at Virginia Tech. As always, go Tigers.